Hey friends, today let's talk about pens. You know, with a notebook or a scratch pad and a pen, there's no limit to what you're able to do these days, right? If you can think it, you can make it. You can learn about how to do it on YouTube or Skillshare or something like that. And then you can literally make it happen. These pens can be super meaningful for making stuff happen in our lives. But not all pens are created equal. You can go to like a supermarket, get pens. You go to Walmart, you can go wherever. You can shop online and find some pens. I've gone and found a bunch of cheap pens, some expensive pens, and I've compared them over the last several months, getting used to them. I wanna lay out in this video which ones I think you should know about. Okay, because not all the expensive ones are excellent, and not all the cheap ones are terrible. Now, when we're thinking of pens, we have a few different things to think through here. Can you put it in your pocket or your bag without it spilling ink? Is it possible to use refills, or do you have to throw everything away and put them into landfills? How gooey and thick is it to write with? How scratchy and thin? How much I get fatigued when I'm writing with them? These are the things that matter when we're, this is the human experience of writing with a writing device like this. When you're writing your thing down in a notebook that you might be the notes to a project that ends up changing your life, a movie that you make, a love note that you write to the person that you end up marrying or something like that. I found an old poem from my dad. It was written with a pen. All these things and more we're gonna talk about in this video. I'm gonna do it as fast as I possibly can so you can just get the information. Everything that I am talking about is linked to by time code below. I've got a few different chunks, category or chapters in the video. And if you'll allow us, we can just get a little persnickety about it, right? All right, our first category here are these like ballpoint pens, ballpoint, rollerball, gel ink, all this stuff. Listen, I'm not an expert on this. I'm gonna talk to you about what these pens are like to use from a layman's perspective. A couple in this category just aren't that valuable to think about. So this one I call the Stabilo Fatty, okay? It feels quite juicy and smooth to write with. It's got a nice girthy grip size, and it responds well to pressure, but you don't have to push super hard on it. It does respond better to pushing hard. If you have to push hard on a pen often, it's gonna get more fatiguing. It's got a nice fat girth, diameter. This is something we're gonna see in a lot of these pens. I think some of you really like a fat pen. Some of you might even like a thin pen. That's gonna be up to you. It's a clippy, okay? So that means if it's in your pocket or in your bag, it can accidentally get clicked. Now, the final thing I want you to know about on this is see how high the clip comes on this? That's nice for when you are attaching it to a notebook and you have very little sticking up over. I wanna show you this little guy, the Polka pen. It has this clip that comes off. It's an accessory. It's designed to be super small and just go right in your pocket, right? So you just have it where you need it, like don't have to worry about a thing. A very simple plastic experience. It writes like a standard ballpoint pen just fine, nothing to write home about, nothing super special except for the fact that it is pocketable and it has like these little, in fact, there's all sorts of little accessories you can get, like key clips that clip onto the back of it and stuff like that. If you have one of these key clips on there, it means you can't put that. So it's just cool little product. Check it out. You'll notice this clip comes in handy on one of our later pens. Okay, this one, love this green color, is from Caran d'Ache, Swiss made. I have tried to get rid of this pen a lot. I just haven't been able to do it. This thing writes really clean and smooth. It like somehow makes me want to think cleaner or clearer. Ever since I read Getting Things Done by David Allen like decades ago, he says you have a juicy whiteboard marker at a blank whiteboard. You're gonna have different thoughts than you would if you have a pencil on a piece of paper that's all wrinkly or a juicy pen on a blank piece of paper. The writing device might just affect the way you think. That might sound sound crazy to some of you. To some of us, that's to some of us, that's like all we're thinking about these days, and we should focus more on just getting things done, regardless of what we're writing with. But this pen has an allure to me. However, very thin girth in my hand, and I notice my hand gets really fatigued. This does not use a standard insert. Giant cartridge Goliath. This is 8428 medium black. Look for this thing and any pens that can fit this in it. Why is that? Because I think that this insert is actually really interesting. This feels really good to write with, but this barrel is too thin for me. Then we've got this little Delphonics, very thin barrel in my hand, very thin line. I only include this here for those of you who might be really prone to liking these thinner feeling pens and pencils. It's definitely a nice feeling. However, over time, it's not doable. Also, no clip here, which is something I need. Okay, then we have this Papermate, black on black, matte black, little white logo thing. Got a cap, so I don't have to worry about this coming off in the bag. It's got a clip that's way up high. I wish it was even a little higher, coming right off this. This is what I'm keeping in my journal these days, and you can see how high up the clip still has a little bit of a lip, but that's pretty good. It writes really smooth and juicy. You only need a very light touch. For me, for a rollerball, for a cheap pen that I can buy by the box and have around everywhere and just have everything be the same, look no further. This is my favorite of this like whole thing. Cheap. Bummer is it's not refillable, right? It's going into the landfill when I'm done. Now, this isn't the only ballpoint pen or pen in this video that writes smooth, has a light touch, feels juicy, looks good, has a good cap and all that stuff. It's just, this is the one that does them all, okay? So, I'm linking to everything below. I will link to this below and put some asterisks on it as my personal favorite after testing way too many and just thinking so much about it. But another one that works really well is this Zebra Z-Grip, okay? This works great. It has a little more of a cheaper look to me. I don't love this see-through thing. However, it does allow you to see how much ink you have, which is not something that you have here. So you just gotta keep a couple of these in your bag, you know, at all times. Whereas this one, you can tell when you're running low. It does have a clicky instead of a cap, right? You've got like, you know, none of this impresses me very much, but you should know that this writes really well. This one from Muji is actually erasable, okay? And it erases pretty dang good, but it's not great to write with. It has a very kind of scratchy sort of feel, which some of you actually might like, and it erases pretty dang good, like arguably better than pencils. But it's just too funky of a writing experience for me. It's too scratchy. It's not my preferred modality. And then you've got this multi from Otto. Epic mechanism for this, by the way. Black dot, up, you're gonna get the black pen. Click this thing for it to go away. Red dot, up, you're gonna get the red pen. Click that thing to go away. 0.5 pencil, you're gonna get a pencil. Focusing on the pen here, it feels good to write with. It's a thinner line and pretty precise, and you've got this whole multi thing. And it's like, I don't know, it just feels really good in the hand. It's metal, pretty perfect. I could go with a little bit fatter of a barrel, but ultimately it's pretty perfect. The bummer on this is you've got a really long gap when that's undone between my clip and the edge. So like in my bag, this is all getting pressure and putting weight on whatever page or journal I've got it clipped onto. But this does allow us to do some pretty nice stuff, like circle my favorite one in a different color, okay? Don't discount how nice it is to have a simple like editor's color around. When you're writing in a notebook, this can make a really big difference. Being able to highlight things that you've gone back and you're looking through notes now and you only get to do this really once, maybe twice. You write in your notebook, maybe it's been a few weeks, you're going back and you're looking at several pages, put a little star in red or circle something or underline something. So for me, I used this for a long time, and ultimately it just got annoying that this stuck up over the end of the journal so much. Okay, those are my category of ballpoint pens. Now we're gonna, and these are in this same category, but not gonna talk about those. These are the rollerball pens. You get a fatter, thicker, gooier ink, and none more fat than this one from Zebra, the Sarasa Clip. Okay, you can see how much ink you have. Very plasticky looks, which is surprising that it has such a gooey, like juicy line. And we've got a clippy clip. Then we have this Energel, which is slightly lighter, medium weight, nice tip dynamics, a little more precise. It feels really smooth and good. I'm not a huge fan of just the look and the feel of this clickety clack, but it writes quite nice. Then we've got this one from Tizo, a 0.35, if you can see that. You got a nice little cap for this thing. Nice clip, comes right down to the, just like very minimal clip, and a nice little point. It feels very precise and competent to write with, okay? Nice girth on the hand, a little bit thicker than you'd imagine, and that feels good. Kind of a scratchy feeling when you're writing with it, kind of scratchy. Like barely, like when you're comparing it to this Sarasa gooey, like it's just, and this is a little more of like a shing, shing, shing. Is that, is that what we're doing? Very competent pen. I've started using this in like my little studio notebook as like, it's just always right there. It always works. It has a little tiny thin pen, which I want, like tip, which I worry about like getting bent or scratching if it falls, but you buy them in a box and I like this one. Time code links to everything I'm showing you below in the YouTube description. Then we've got this one from Muji, which I've always loved, this like sort of cloudy plastic look. You can still see the ink, but it's not quite as plasticky. Like, I don't know, something about this opaque plastic feels a little bit nicer. Nice little tiny cap, which is on solid here, and here it can sometimes come off. It just writes super thin. And arguably, it's too scratchy of a writing experience. However, some of you really like a thin, small, like you're just scratching out some notes really quick. This is a nice pen for that kind of thing. But for me, I want something that is going to welcome longer writing if I feel like it. Then we have this Papermate Inkjoy. It's a kind of nice construction, but just kinda. A little bit, I don't know. It works great. You got this gooey little top bit here that goes up, and over. It's like kind of nice. Smooth, clear line on a clicky pen. But for me personally, I would do the other Papermate, this one over here, which we've seen before for a few reasons. It's a good pen though. Then we have the Pilot Precise V5. It has a nice touch as you're writing with it. A bit of a worrisome tip. It's quite long and thin here, but the touch on the page feels really good. Nice big cap, and this is one of the best clips on the market. I mean, it does lose its springiness, but it comes all the way up to the top of that pen. For that clip alone, I'm like, oh, I kind of, maybe I'll make this my everyday, but it just, you know, I prefer the ballpoint feeling in the pen, honestly, because it just, when I'm writing in my journal, because it just feels less precious, I guess, in some ways. However, this kind of pen and this one here, the Tizo, I'd probably go this instead of this, but this has a better clip. All right, so now you know. Okay, now let's talk about some funky, different kinds of pens before we go on to what are the like high rollers, like the really nice pen. Like, let's get a good pen. It's not too expensive, but let's make it count. So the first one that we're gonna hit here is this Micron 01 from Sakura. Nice little clip here at the top. You've seen these before. It's like an art pen. Super fine line, very fine, arguably too fine. Is there such a thing? as being too fine. For me, everyday writing is no bueno with this thing, but it is a solid pen if you need something very thin. Then there's your Sharpie pen, right, with the ultra fine point. However, this one is just too bleedy. It just bleeds a bit too much. It can be useful for like more heavy duty purposes. So I include it here because the line's actually really nice. But I definitely prefer this one. Also from Sakura, it's the IdentiPen. Surprisingly nice to write with. And it does have two sides, a fatty and a thin, and good girth on this thing as well. Little less bleedy than the Sharpie. I've used these a lot. Then we have this Tombow brush pen. I have used this one a lot as well. I really dig it. You've got some nice tip dynamics with this thing. It's surprisingly not very bleedy. There is some worrisome ink longevity. Sometimes you really can't tell with all of these how much ink is left, so you need to have multiple. Also with these, the tip definitely gets worn down over time, which you can see this one on the left is a bit more used. But brush pens feel really fun. I really like them actually. They're good. But I get a little artsy fartsy. Okay, let's talk about some of these fancy guys. Fancy pens. This one's from a company called Everyman. It actually is nice, like got a nice little heft to it. Got a clicky clack on the top, like metal bits on the clip, because this is man's pen. It writes nice and solid, the slight bit of resistance. This is the ink cartridge that it came with. It has a nice girth and overall just feels solid. Okay, now these next two, these are from Studio Neat. This is the Mark 1. There's nothing that stops it from rolling, but the way that it feels in the hand is legit. Solid, lovely feeling. This is one of my favorite pens to just fiddle with, to like just have, right? The click just feels so good to me. By the way, that company Polka, who makes these pens, they make a clip that fits right on top of there. So that way I can get a pen tip like way up at the top like that, so this can clip right onto my notebook and not stand up above it at all. And I've got that clickiness and the way that it feels to write. When it comes to fancy, nice pens, this feels really good. And it's got replaceable, you can put in any ink cartridges you want. They fit that like standard size. Now, this is also from Studio Neat, and I absolutely love the design here. It's got a magnet that pulls it in. How do they work? Feels really good sinking it in that way. Got a clip that comes up almost right to the top. Then you pull out that little cartridge and bada bing. You've got a pen like this, and when it goes in your pocket, super small. So this is a radical pen. This feels really good. It's got a nice heft. My one concern for me personally is it doesn't have the same girth down here as this. This barrel is the same size as this, but that little bit of difference coming down here to write is slightly noticeable. I like the big one. I like the big one in my hand, but I like this one for in my pocket. I mean, that is just gorgeous. Then there is the pen that started it all for me. This is the Retro 51 Tornado. It was a gift from my friend Mike. I don't even know if these guys are still in business, and I know we're talking about pens, but this is the pen that began my whole like, oh, wait, we can have nice pens. I bought bulk of these to give them away as gifts. They're like a $20 pen, but it feels really nice. You've got this great twist cap to open and close. Twist cap's great because it does not open by itself when you don't want it to. I'm not sure what ink insert I have in here, but this one feels, of all of these, probably the smoothest and the nicest. In fact, let's check it out. I think there's a little spring in here, so I gotta be careful. But that is, yeah, it's theirs. It's the Retro 51 CAPLESS 8127P. Number on the bottom is 304. I don't know what any of those numbers mean, but maybe that'll help you find out what this is, or if I will find it and put a link in the description below. Okay, so here's that Mark 1. I'm gonna put this one in here because I just mucho gusto. So now my Mark 1 has that juicier line from that Retro 51 insert. Here's the Baron Fig pen. It doesn't have any clip. They call it like the sword or something. It's got a nice little turny, but it also, you can turn a little too much and it starts unscrewing. I haven't really liked writing with this. I'll link to it below because it does have a nice heft and feel in the hand. Some of you might be more drawn to this than the Mark 1, but I personally would go for the Mark 1 instead of this one. Okay, these are quite good looking. Kamiko Sport, this one, I think they make some that are fountain pens, but it's got a nice big, gooey, like chunky thing that comes off. My bummer here is what I'm writing with is still actually pretty small. So you've got this big fatness here, but down here, it's not very fat. It writes great, feels fine, but I do wish it had more girth. It is quite lightweight too. Like you can feel the plasticiness of it. However, being able to throw it in my pocket just like this is cool. This is nice. I mean, I want to be very clear. I don't throw pens in my pockets. I only ever really have a pen clipped to a notebook. But I know that a lot of you need that sort of thing. So this is interesting. Interesting. Okay, then finally, this is kind of silly, but I do this often. This is that Retro 51 insert, and it comes with a little plastic tip, and I put a little piece of tape on it like that, and this becomes my bookmark in a book. So I'll have these in any book that I'm reading, typically. It's not a great writing experience. Doesn't feel that beautiful because it's so small. However, for underlining in books and stuff like that, it gets the job done. I've kind of moved away from this simply by nature of the fact that I've gotten used to thinking critically about pens. That's the stage of life that I'm in. How are you doing? And the thinness really does feel fatiguing. Okay, 2 more pens to show you here. Our fancy fountain pens, both of them from Lamy. Lamy? Okay, this Lamy Safari is, I do like this look and the feel of it. It just like feels big and chunky in my hands. This feels like clip it onto a shirt pocket. Like this feels legit. I have a worry about the like durability and reliability of these inserts, let alone the expense of them. But this is an accessible pen. When I'm writing with this thing, it makes me want to have more space to write, okay? It makes me want to write bigger, which is cool. None of these have made me want to do that. I also like that there's this watercolor-like ink effect where there's some variation, and it does feel scratchy as I write, but it's not a bug. It's kind of nice. Definitely a worthy experience for this one. Then there's the Lamy Studio, which also feels great. I probably prefer the Safari. The chunkiness of it just feels more aesthetically pleasing. This one's more expensive. It does have a nicer nib. It's smoother. Definitely feel it's smoother and less scratchy down here. Also, I think because I'm writing in black instead of the blue, if I was blue ink here, I would have that variation in color, which I think is kind of cool looking. Both of these are, you know, great. You got the big pen cap. These are great clips for journals and stuff. I have not grown accustomed to them because sometimes I just find that they're unreliable. There's something about the nibs that just feels like, am I doing this right when I'm inserting them? I've like watched videos and stuff, but anyways, they do feel nice. I would recommend this Safari. It's, I believe, cheaper than the Studio, and it does feel chunky in your hand. It feels great. Like if you're looking for a fountain pen, this seems within reach, and it performs like, it's nice. You will, like, I want to write bigger. I want to get a bigger notebook. Okay, what have I learned from all of this? Number 1, your pen doesn't matter. Just use whatever you've got. Get that note down. Number 2, if you find yourself getting fussy in the middle of taking a note because your pen's either running out of ink or not working the way you wanted to, or you brushed it up on something, these inserts on all of these fancy pens down here, if you just get one little bump on the tip of that thing, it's not gonna be usable, right? You gotta put the next refill in there. That's one thing I've noticed. But a couple things I've learned. Number 1, having a multi-pen is kind of nice. So I can just do this live. I've got my red. I've already circled my favorite Papermate. This is my favorite cheap pen by a long shot. I love this thing, would highly recommend. Link to that below. Number 2, the insert on this one is really nice. I'm gonna be finding a pen to put this insert into, the Capan de Ash, Caron de Ash, I don't know. I'll link to it below if I can find it. Number 3, this Tizo, this guy here, I actually really like. This is a solid for that whole category. This is my choice. I definitely like this Identapen right here from Sakura. I think that's a good one to have. And this Lamy Safari is radical. Like, if you jonesing for a fountain pen, this thing's really fun. And then in these fancy ones, honestly, this Mark 1 is probably my favorite if I go with the Polka clip, add that to it. My one bummer is I don't love putting things like this in my bag because it can just take one click and now it's writing and losing ink on stuff. So, but the feeling of it in my hand is sensational. There you have it. Here's everything that to me is the best of the best. And I could just do everything with this cheap ass Papermate. There's something respectable about going with the cheap stuff. Get a little like those old composition notebooks. There's just nothing to it, and just fill it up. Make shit. Your life is out there waiting for you. Maybe you needed a pen. Maybe you thought you needed a pen before you could really get going. Now, make a choice and move on with your life. Just go. It's all waiting for you out there. And nobody else is gonna do it for you. Links below. I think I'm gonna make a page at matterful.co of my favorite pens and notebooks. You can click that link below. While you're there, get on the email list because we do giveaways. Next giveaway is at 150,000 subs. I basically don't send emails there at all, except for when the giveaway is. So get on the list there if you wanna win free, cool stuff that's useful for everyday life. I have been Chase Wardman-Reeves. Thanks for watching. If you made it all the way here, we got a little bit of a connection. I can feel it. Can you? Maybe you want to subscribe. Hit that bell. I think I'm supposed to say, crush that bell. But thanks for watching. Comments and questions in the comments. I'll answer what I can. Be yourself. Everyone else is taken. Bye.